Hey everyone, today I'm going to be thinking about how I recovered from my most recent depression. That was the really long one that went from late 2015 until early this year, actually, early 2018. So yeah, I've been depressed like on and off since, since puberty, I guess, you know. But this one was, oh, you going Hopi? No, you're staying, okay. Yeah, this most recent one is just like, it was the longest and hardest one that I've ever been through. And I've talked about how it happened, I guess, or like what triggered it in the first place. Essentially, I burned out because I was working during the day from about 10:30 to 5, and then I'd come home and do more work for my band because we were working on our EP. And then my grandparents died within a few months of each other, and it was just like, all my existential crap just came back, and I was just too tired to, have that sort of psychological resilience against it. So I collapsed, and yeah, entered my longest and hardest episode of depression ever. So yeah, I thought for some of you who have only just stumbled on some of my videos about that depression, maybe it would be good to know that I am better. I am much better now. I am not depressed. I've still got issues, but I am happier. I am moving on with my life. And maybe what some of you want to know is how that happened, because yeah, like when you're depressed, it feels like it's gonna go forever, and it feels like you're not gonna recover. And even if you're someone like me who has been on and off most of your life, really, you know that you're gonna get better, but it doesn't always feel like it. So yeah, maybe this will be hopeful, and maybe it'll be helpful, because some of the things that worked for me might work for you as well. If you haven't been following my videos though, I will put one up like here, I think is where it appears. Blah blah blah. I'll also put it in the description, my video on melancholic depression and dysthymia, because I haven't watched it in a while, but I'm pretty sure I talk about some of the things that I'm going through. But to summarize, I guess, like with melancholic depression, that's the biological one. And so like I know that some of this was probably triggered by psychological factors, but I think for me, I tend to have biological factors as well, and maybe the psychological things for me tripped the biological side of depression, because yeah, I just like, the psychologist couldn't really talk to me because I don't have the same problems as a lot of people. And then yeah, I had a lot of the biological symptoms, like sleeping was probably the biggest one. And also like the mornings. My sleep pattern was really bad, but also waking up in the morning was hard, and then I already felt terrible even though I hadn't had time to think about anything in the morning. And that's like one of those signs that you've got melancholic depression. And with that, like, because it's biological, it's not so easy to treat with therapy. And maybe the most obvious thing that they always tell you to do is exercise. But if you have no energy, how are you supposed to exercise? It's really hard. It's one of these like self-perpetuating spirals. If you don't exercise, you're gonna feel worse. But if you feel bad, you can't exercise. So it keeps going like that. So often when you get as bad as I was, the next step is medication. And medication just didn't work for me. For some reason, I am too sensitive to the side effects, and basically any benefit that the medication was giving me was being cancelled out by the side effects of medication. So that just wasn't an option. So, I had to think of different ways to recover. And in the past, one of the things that seemed to help me a lot was like, I'd sit around feeling depressed for a while, but then I think, I need to do something with my life and change it. And often I would start a new university course and think, this is going to be the thing that fixes my life. So after my first uni course, that was the time that I realized, oh, maybe I don't want to be doing what everyone said I should be doing. So yeah, then I was like, well, let's try art. I like art, maybe I can be an artist. And then when that course disappointed me is when I thought, oh, maybe I'll go and do music. Music could be fun. So constantly thinking, oh, what's another thing that's gonna fix my life? That used to work, but now what? I'm 30 years old, I'm too old and jaded to be like, oh, maybe this other thing will fix my life. Like, it never really happens. I get my expectations too high, and then no, it doesn't work out, and then possibly I feel worse because whatever I was clinging to fix my life, just, it didn't. You know, it might work for some of you guys if you're stuck in a terrible situation and you just, you know, you're thinking maybe I do need to change my life, because sometimes depression is a sign that your life, you're not doing the right thing. So if you change your situation, sometimes that can help. But for me, I really have problems with that whole existential crap and nihilism and whatever. I just feel like life is meaningless. And, you know, with melancholic depression, it killed my ability to feel excited or hopeful about anything or wanting things. So, you know, I couldn't even make my own meaning to, you know, make this life worthwhile. So I really just needed to get on top of whatever is making me feel awful. Anyway, so those are some things that didn't work for me. I guess I'll get onto the things that I'm thinking maybe helped me. Now, I've got to say that this is personal to me. It seemed to help me. It may not work for you. And the other thing is, I'm kind of just guessing. I actually don't know for sure how I recovered, but these are some of my ideas. So the first thing I'm thinking that helped was just time, the passage of time. Now, it probably sounds weird because that was like, what, a 3-year depression stint, which is the longest that I've ever had. And when you're in that, you think, this is never going to end. I've recovered from depression in the past much faster than this. This is not going to end. But, you know, even though that was a long depression and it felt like it was never going to end and I was worried I would never be fine again, I would just always be depressed. Something that I realized in hindsight is actually that as time went on, it did sort of chill out a bit. So at the start of my depression, I was just really like, it was pretty terrible. You know, I've struggled to function, particularly with the antidepressants that they were trying me on at the time, before we realized they didn't work for me, but also the pain was a lot worse, probably because of biological factors mixing with psychological factors, because, you know, my grandparents had died and I was right into thinking all those stuff. So I think as time went by, possibly the psychological side of things did chill out. And maybe another thing is, like, as I sort of accepted that I had a really serious episode of depression and a long-term one, I think I sort of learned to be a bit easier on myself and just realized, oh my God, you are actually sick. You know, there's only a certain amount that you can do. You wouldn't expect someone with like breathing problems to go for a jog, and you've got depression. It's not physical in that same way. I mean, there are aspects that feel quite physical, but like it's not obvious in the way of, you know, having a lung condition or having missing part of your leg or whatever, but it can be that serious. And so I think as I kind of accepted that, I probably gave myself a bit more space and a bit more forgiveness, and that I think helped, you know, just sort of even it out a bit. So instead of just feeling really low all the time, I would just like, you know, it sort of chilled out to an easier to manage kind of thing. And I think that's just with the passage of time. And then, of course, at the end of it, I did recover. And, you know, it's hard to say how many of each factor really worked, but I do think that time, you know, eventually you are going to recover. So as more time passes, the chances that you're getting closer to that recovery point kind of increase, I guess, if that makes any sense. You know, it sort of feels like, I mean, this is for me. Some people have really serious depression that doesn't recover in the same way, but for me, it's always gone through a cycle of recovery. You know, and like, because I'm one of these chronic cases where it keeps coming back, but I know it's going to pass. So yeah, for me at least, it kind of feels like with depression, sometimes it just needs to run its course. And that could be the same for you. If it's your first time being depressed, then I would say chances are really good that you're going to recover and it'll be fine. If you've had depression a few times, you know, you can probably get an idea of your pattern. And like, if you've had depression a few times, you have recovered. So I would be hopeful that, you know, you just hang in there, you know, do your best. It feels like it's going to go forever. but at some point you do recover. So yeah, that's why I think time was actually a factor in terms of me getting better again. The second thing that I think helped me was just keeping busy. So I have this checklist that I go through when I'm depressed. And you know, some of them, as I mentioned, aren't really great. So it's like sleep, diet, exercise, keeping busy, helping people, and I think there was something else, but I've forgotten it. It was probably like one that I added more recently, so I don't remember. But like, okay, sleep is hard with melancholic depression because, you know, it does mess up your mornings. And I mean, for some people they sleep more, for some people they sleep less. I think I ended up sleeping more. I mean, I would stay up really late, but then I'd also need more sleep in the morning. And, you know, I guess it's hard to say, but it did mess up my sleep pattern. So trying to get my sleep pattern on top of things wasn't really working. Sleep, diet, my diet's fine. I mean, I'm skinny anyway, so my challenge is usually making sure I eat. But once I got off the antidepressant that destroyed my appetite, I've been able to eat more, and I've been pretty stable. I'm 52 kilograms usually, just stays like that, which is heaps better than I used to be at 47. Like for my height, oh my god, 47 was not good. But yeah, so diet, I'm usually fine. I mean, my mum cooks really good food, variety and all that stuff. So diet, I don't have to worry about. Exercise, when you're depressed, as I said before, really hard to exercise. But the next point is keeping busy. And so for me, I mean, when I first had to stop working, and I think I talked about that maybe 2 videos ago, when I first stopped working, like I did just need some time to chill out. But there is a point where you're like, you're so bored and you're so miserable, and you're like, if I sit here on my bum forever, I'm just not going to get better. Like, you know, I've got to get something to happen in my life to really get a recovery. And, you know, also to occupy your brain, because if you're just lying in bed or lounging around all the time feeling gloomy, you're sort of just thinking and thinking about how crap everything is, and that's no good. So partly to like get my life moving and to distract myself as well. That was really the motivation for me going back to uni to do my master degree in art. So yeah, with that, I mean, I was not able to work. So you would be like, well, how do you know you can study, you know, and concentrate on that? But the way I managed it, I started this course when, like, just as part-time. And the other thing is, this course, it's an art course, so the number of hours you have to spend in class, I think was something like 12 hours. You do 4 subjects, and usually there's 3 hours each, and usually they do them in one block. So, you know, if you can get them all together, you don't even have to go in that many days, which was really good for me. And that's the full-time load, 12 hours a week, you know. So when I started part-time, just doing 6 hours a week, and I think maybe I got them on the same day, so I only had to go in one day. I don't remember, it was a while ago. But that got me out of the house, you know, get some sunlight. I was playing Pokemon Go as well, which helped me get out of the house. But the main thing for me was going to uni. Being around people, even though I didn't really want to talk to them, especially that early on, getting busy with assignments. And, you know, assignments for me, your psychology may not be like this, but my psychology is, if I have a deadline, I have to meet it. And so that's how I manage to like get myself to actually do something. And it works a lot better for me in a university or class kind of situation. If I set myself a deadline, I think I know that there's too much wiggle room. Whereas with university, there's actual like consequences, at least academic consequences, if you don't get your assignment in on time. And I also, I haven't always been like this, but nowadays, you know, especially towards the end, I was the kind of person who would get my work in early, get things finished early, because I don't want to be worried about that looming deadline. So I would get things done. So yeah, university actually helped me get stuff done and keep doing things and occupy my mind with things other than my depression. You know, a little bit hard at first to concentrate, but once I got back into the flow of it, for me and my psychology, that really helped. So yeah, university, like, it didn't fix me, but it helped me, I guess, get through some of that depression because it was such a long depression. If I didn't have anything to do, I think it would have been a lot harder to survive it. And then, like, if you think about it, I guess it's also a goal. There were some rocky times where I thought maybe I wouldn't finish it. Maybe I'd just do one semester and quit, like I've done so many times in the past. But I managed to just keep up the work and keep up the work, and then finish the degree, and I now have a master's degree. It may not be the most intellectually challenging one, but I did a lot of work because, you know, even though there's not a lot of contact hours in terms of going to class, you are expected to do a lot of work outside class, and I was doing that. I mean, I still had plenty of time for my YouTube and whatever, you know, watching videos and just like absorbing information. But I was doing the work, and so for me that was an achievement to work towards, and you know, actually getting there and finishing it, you're like, yes. You know, for most of the degree, for 3 semesters out of 4, I was depressed and I still made it through. So, you know, it's not just about helping me through the depression, it's something I can look back on and be like, wow, I did really well to be able to survive that, you know. So maybe next time I get depressed, which I assume will happen, next time I get depressed, it can be like, well, last time I made this achievement, so there's no reason that, for me at least, there's no reason that depression means I can't do anything. You know, look at what I've achieved before. So yeah, university was helpful. So the third thing that I think really helped, and this is probably one of the big ones, was telling Centrelink to fuck off. Really, like, there's no other way to put it. Fuck off, Centrelink. They were just so bad for my mental health. And like, there's so many things, I've talked about them before, but I've written a few things in this page, which I will just try and read some of it. So like, okay, the first thing that Centrelink did that really messed with my mental health is like, I had a medical condition. I had paperwork from my doctor, from my psychiatrist. Like, I had all this evidence that I had a medical condition that I couldn't work. Especially early on, like, I was taking medication to try and fix this, and that was impacting me so badly that was the reason I had to stop working, is treatment for my depression and how bad my depression was. And Centrelink, like, you know, they lost some of my paperwork, and then, you know, there was something that wasn't filled out right, and they wouldn't tell me how to fill it out properly to make sure it's right, and my doctor's trying to do, like, you know, we're all trying to figure out, what the hell do you want, Centrelink? And so that took ages, and there was this bureaucratic nonsense where they're like, oh, your medical certificate's expired, but like, and then so we can't give you any more exemptions, and I'm like, I haven't even gotten my first exemption, what are you talking about? It's just like weird stuff where things can, like, they can claim that things have expired before you even applied for Centrelink. It was just, you know, it's hard to explain because I don't even understand what the hell they were talking about. But every time you talk to a different person as well, they tell you something different. So it was really hard to like figure out, what exactly do you want from me to prove that I have this condition? It was a real shit fight, and that made me feel crap. And anytime something else came up, they just make you feel terrible. They make you feel like an idiot, like they don't believe you, like they don't support you, like it would be better off you if you were just dead instead. And I'm just like, I have a mental health condition, why are you treating me like that? It was really bad. I'm sure I've done some videos a little bit on what that was like. And yeah, this psychologist, I mentioned it in, I think 2 videos ago, this psychologist, I had to fight to get a medical assessment because they wouldn't take my paperwork. And so when I finally, like, you know, I wouldn't leave the place until, like, I was crying in Centrelink, which is embarrassing as hell to be crying in public so badly. But, you know, I couldn't move. So they eventually got, like, someone to be like, well, we can get you a medical assessment, which I had to do on my birthday, whatever year that was. Yeah, but it was just this rehab guy, and I'm like, I'm not a druggie or anything. I'm depressed, and I have all this paperwork, and he got me a short exemption. But when that ran out, and I was like, you know, I'm not recovered. I have a long-term form of depression. Are you guys crazy? So they eventually got me on a phone call with one of their psychologists, and she gave me a longer exemption, and that helped me that year because, you know, that was the longest period that they didn't bother me too much for. Occasionally there were things that came up that were annoying, but you know, overall that helped. But then when that exemption ran out, I was still depressed, and I found out that this psychologist had assessed me as being able to work 23 hours a week without checking in on me to see if my condition had improved. Like, you can't just assume someone has improved without checking. And I was just blown away, because like, even now I have recovered, I cannot work 23 hours a week. I'm still mental, I still have issues. I don't know what those issues are, because they're not depression, but I can't work 23 hours a week yet. I think I'm doing about like maximum 16 hours a week. That is all I'm managing at the moment. I'm trying to work my way up, but like, and these guys are assuming, even while I'm depressed, that I could do 23 hours a week. It was just like, the expectations, they just assume that you're dull bludging. And I'm like, no, I have a medical condition. So, you know, and then, yeah, they have this whole bureaucratic nonsense. Like, the system is really badly set up and no one knows anything. No one has clear answers about how anything works. So that was always frustrating, because I was always trying to figure out, like, why are they saying this to me? What did I do wrong? It's a system that's designed to break you. It's a system that, like, it makes mental illness worse. Anytime I made progress in my recovery, I felt like they were undermining me. And which doesn't make sense, because, you know, if I recover, I can get back into work sooner, which means I don't need as much Centrelink, you know? So you'd think that they'd want me to recover, but instead, they were stopping me from recovering, which meant I didn't get better, which meant I still needed Centrelink. It just, like, it makes no sense. The system really needs to change. And this is all because they want to catch a handful of dull bludgers. Like, the number of people who are exploiting the system is so low compared to the number of people that the system is fucking over. Just, it gives me the shits. And yeah, I could probably dig up some of the rants I went on Facebook while some of this shit was going down, because, you know, let me know if you want me to dig those up, but for now, I think we should move on. You get the idea though, really. Like, I mentioned a couple of videos ago about how money affects my psychology, and, you know, I need to feel like I'm not losing money all the time. I mean, I don't have a lot of money in my bank account, but, you know, I really don't have a lot in my bank account, but I had enough to, like, sort of be okay for a little while, and Centrelink helped keep that stable for a bit. You know, I wasn't losing too much while I was on Centrelink, but I kind of had to weigh up the two parts of my psychology, because Centrelink was really fucking me over. Compare that to my possibly irrational issues with money. I just had to weigh it up, and I was like, you know what, let's ditch Centrelink. I would rather see my bank account just go down the drain, because as far as those things are in, like, affecting my depression, Centrelink was much worse. So when I got rid of Centrelink, it was freeing. It felt like a weight had lifted off. So I think telling them to get lost, that's something else that helped me recover from depression. The fourth thing that helped me was that Japan trip that I went on at the end of 2017 into the start of this year, 2018. I went to Japan for a month, stayed with my relatives over there, because I'm half Japanese, I know I don't look it, but yeah, just stayed with them. And, you know, like, it's really important when you're depressed to try and have something to look forward to. So for me, that was my thing. I don't remember when I organized the trip. I think I organized it like a year in advance, something ridiculous like that. And, you know, that's one of the reasons I didn't have much money, because I had to pay for all that early. But yeah, you know, I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna survive the year so that I can go on this trip to Japan. And then the other thing about it was, like, I mean, I didn't know at the time that I booked it that Centrelink was going to continue to be so terrible for me. But what ended up happening is I ditched Centrelink just before I went to Japan, because I was like, you know what, it's not helping, it's making me feel worse. And so one of the things about Japan is I got out of the country, so I just didn't have to think about anything anymore. I ditched Centrelink and I just left the country, not think about it. It's kind of like a circuit breaker to break you out of that irritating, terrible situation. Another thing about Japan that was important for me is that it really made me practice some independence, because, like, yes, I'm 30 and I'm an adult, but I'm mental in ways that, you know, I still feel like I'm a big kid. I don't feel like I'm an adult. I don't feel like I would be able to handle adult life. I mean, I'm still living with my parents, and that's not just for financial reasons. I mean, like, you know, my youngest brother's disabled, so it helps that me and my other brother, stay home, because then we can all take turns trying to look after him and so on. But, you know, also, like, I don't think I'm not a real adult, you know. I'm really terrible. So one of the things about Japan is, like, I went by myself. That's the first time I've been on a plane by myself. That's the first time I've been in another country by myself. I mean, of course, I stayed with my relatives, but they've got work and school and all those things. So I was often leaving the house, catching the train by myself in a country with a language that I only a little bit speak, and trying to, like, you know, get around the place by myself. I went to Mount Fuji by myself. I went to Osaka by myself, all this kind of stuff. For me, it was like showing me that I can do things independently. Like, I'm not as terrible as I think I am. I mean, I'm still pretty terrible, but it was sort of like an exercise in, you know, you need to get out of your comfort zone and try something new, and try to be, like, you know, just get out there a little bit more. So learning at least to be a little bit more independent, I think, was important for someone like me to do. And then also, like, when I first arrived in Japan, I was still depressed, and I think I even had stomach problems. I don't know if that was anxiety related or whatever, but yeah, no, I wasn't the healthiest creature when I went there. But I was still depressed when I first went to Japan, and of course, in the rest of the holidays, I was wasting time because, you know, rather than doing stuff with my life, I'd often just sit, you know, in between semesters when I didn't have assignments. I'd kind of, I don't know, I don't think I really got a whole lot done a lot of the time. So one of the things I was a little bit worried about is, what if I'm still like that in Japan? So, you know, I only had a month in Japan. I was like, I want to make the most of it. So being there and thinking, this might be the only time in my life that I get to go to Japan for a month and just do whatever. So yeah, that gave me extra motivation to get out every day, almost every day. There was one day I was sick, and there were a few other days where I was just too tired. I spent, you know, most of the day pottering around the house watching Japanese TV or, you know, whatever. But most days I got out of the house, which is, like, it's important with depression to try and get out at least once a day. And this wasn't just once a day. I was going on hour-long trips into the middle of Tokyo, walking around, doing shopping, looking at things, and then catching the bus back. The train back. What am I talking about? Buses. I don't catch any buses except the one that took me to and from Mount Fuji, I think. Anyway, yeah, no, I was getting out pretty much every day to try and make the most of this trip, and I think that really helped me just, like, get out there and keep doing things, and, you know, less time to be depressed, more time to be active. I did a lot of walking, which helped with the exercise thing as well. So yeah, knowing that this could be a once-in-a-lifetime thing, I was getting out there, that really helped. And then maybe the last thing, which is kind of embarrassing because I don't see myself as a girly girl or anything, but Mum made this joke saying, like, maybe what you actually needed was retail therapy. Because, when I had organized the trip, I had set aside a lot of money. Like, I converted it into yen when there was a decent rate for it. So, like, obviously I can't use that in Australia, but I had this big pile of yen that I took over there. And, you know, throughout the year I had been working on this music project, and so that gave me some motivation to be like, well, if I'm going to be on stage again, I need to have the stage gear, the sort of gothic stuff that I like. And in Australia, especially in Sydney, all the shops that I used to go to for my gothic stuff are closed, and I hate ordering stuff online because I'm very particular about how things feel. I need them to be comfortable. I can't have certain materials because I don't like scratchy things. So, you know, I have to actually go to a shop and buy something and try something on to know if I am going to like it. Yeah, so one of the things about going to Japan, especially with this goal of, like, I need an outfit to perform in music, I went shopping a lot. Like, most days when I'm going into Tokyo, I went to Harajuku so many times because I just didn't have enough time in the day to go to every shop and try on all the things that I wanted. and all that. So yeah, I really did the consumerist thing, but there is something satisfying about having a goal for something you want to buy and like finding it. It's sort of like that buzz of the hunt and being successful in the hunt and being like, yeah. And also because I had that massive pile of yen that I'd just accumulated, I didn't have to worry about money even. So it was just, I mean, of course I had a limit to how much I could spend, but I purposely overestimated the amount of yen that I would need. I still have some leftover yen. But yeah, no, so I just was like, let's not worry about money, let's just go out, find the things that you want. There's only one thing I didn't buy because it was way too expensive. Otherwise, I was able to buy most of the things that I thought this would be really cool to have. And you know, it's going to be a long time before I can afford to go back to Japan again, so I might as well come home with all the stuff. I ended up having to come home with 2 giant suitcases, so oh, it's so embarrassing, it feels like, but anyway. So yeah, that kind of helped as well in Japan, is just like the thrill of the hunt and the consumerist kind of, so yeah, retail therapy in Japan. Oh, it makes me sound like such a girl, but you know, whatever. It's the only place I can find the stuff that I like. So the 5th and final thing that helped me with recovering from my depression, I've kind of already mentioned, is that new music project that the music project is basically what inspired me to go do all that retail therapy in Japan. I mean, I had other reasons for wanting to go to Japan, but the main thing I did was shopping, and this music project was part of that, you know, inspiration for it, I guess. But so if you're signed up on my Patreon, you will have heard some of the clips from this new project that I'm doing. It's been a bit slow sometimes, like there've been ups and downs, and you know, emotionally that's a little bit difficult because I love the music that we're making and I'm impatient for us to like get it out there and get on stage and all that. But yeah, no, it's like given me something to hope for creatively, because I know I've got my solo music project, but it's not really the kind of music that I wanted to do, and particularly choosing asexuality as a topic, that was more because I was like, well, what's an art wanky thing I can do and shove into music, and then boom, there's project, which, you know, I did really well on. But yeah, this project kind of helps with the keeping busy and something to look forward to, things that help with depression. I mean, it is hard because I am hopeful, but it's also not something that's entirely in my control. So sometimes when it's going a bit slowly, I get a little bit anxious that maybe it won't happen. And this is like, you know, I was saying before about how I would start a new course and be like, maybe this is the thing that'll fix my life. I'm a little bit like, sometimes I worry I'm getting a little bit like that with this music project. But anyway, overall, I love the sound of it, and I'm excited about being able to show people what it's gonna be like. It's a lot of fun. So yeah, having something to look forward to, it's just like caveat, don't get too attached, because anytime it's looked a bit shaky and like it might not go ahead, that's when I've started to get a little bit down. Even though like I'm recovered from depression, occasionally I have bad days, and sometimes it's when I'm thinking, what if that doesn't go ahead? But yeah, no, actually things are starting to pick up a little bit again now, so here's hoping, but being realistic, I don't think we're going to get anything really out there this year, but something to look forward to anyway. And you know, we started that project while I was depressed, and that helped a lot because, you know, it's something to do that's not university, so like, you know, something more for me instead of just like keep doing stuff. Like I felt more attached to it, and I think when you're depressed you need to try and find some way to be attached to this world. Like this world is really awful, but if you can find something that you really love in it and just, you know, attach yourself to it, it helps you find reasons to stay here and to stay alive. You know, I get disconnected from the world and reality a lot, which maybe I'll talk about one day, but yeah, if you're feeling detached from the world and the world is just suffering, it's hard to keep your head on top of things and be like, no, I have to stay alive. Can't take that way out. I've got to stay here. So yeah, having reasons to live is good. Like however dumb it seems or however small it seems, if you have a reason, it's a reason. So that helps. Yeah, so those are the 5 main things that helped me, I think. They might not work for you, but let's just recap. So time, keeping busy, getting rid of Centrelink, going to Japan, and this new music project. Those are the 5 key things, I think. I mean, if you've noticed something else about me that you think has helped me, please let me know, because I'm heaps curious. I haven't entirely figured out how I recovered from depression, because it happened while I was in Japan. I don't know the exact moment, but they're like, you know, my mood was lifting and lightening, and at some point I was just like, oh, I don't feel depressed anymore. I actually feel all right. And, you know, I was a little bit cautious, because I thought, oh, last time I went to Japan, because, you know, I did go to Japan in 2016, and when I came back, I crashed, and, you know, we tried to increase the medication I was on, and my stomach, I started getting really terrible stomach pains and had to stop taking them, and then I got really badly depressed again. Yeah, so, you know, I was like, oh, it'll be like that. You know, I was feeling okay on that Japan trip, but probably the same thing will happen now. Is I'll come home from Japan, and then I'll feel terrible again. But for some reason, yeah, I recovered while I was in Japan, and I stayed more or less stable since then. Like, I'm happier. Like, happy is an interesting word to think about, but I would say I'm doing a lot better, and I'm actually, especially now, I feel like I'm still building myself up from that depression, because it was like 3 years. That's a long period of your time. It can destroy some of the way that you think and feel, but I feel like I'm constantly getting better and better and better, and I'm starting to feel more excited about things in life again. Yeah, it's been a long process, but I actually don't know how it happened, so I'm just thinking about all the things that it could be. So if you have observed something about me, watching me over the past year or so, you know, especially towards the end of my depression, maybe you have some insight that I don't know. I would love your feedback on that. Also, because it helps other people. But yeah, I do have one thing that I've written here that I think I should mention, is like, even though I've recovered, I still get suicidal thoughts. And I don't know if that's part of my ongoing recovery from that long period of depression to becoming, you know, like, maybe I'm in sort of like a neutral to good part of like the emotional spectrum, and I still need to get a little bit more to get properly healthy. But I don't know. I think this is just how my brain works. I still get suicidal thoughts, but I have noticed that it usually happens if something goes wrong, or if I'm thinking about things that cause me anxiety, especially in the future. You know, for example, like I've said before, is if I think about money, like, you know, my parents aren't going to be here forever, what am I going to do for money then? If I start thinking about that too much, or like, you know, or if like before I go and teach at my job, like, you know, what if the kids are, and what if the thing I'm supposed to teach them, and what if, you know, if I start thinking about that, I actually am high on anxiety anytime I've been tested by a psychologist. Just, it's never been enough to really diagnose me with something, and to me, I don't feel like it affects me as much as depression does, so I've never worried too much about anxiety, but I do think that that's a factor in sort of turning on this thing in my head that's like, you know, I want to die, I want to die, I want to die kind of thing. So yeah, I do still get suicidal thoughts, even though I would consider myself to be fairly healthy now. I'm not depressed. I'm fine. So that's something I'm ongoing that I need to, you know, stay on top of. And I think also some of that problem is also like, there are a lot of difficult things in life that you have to overcome. And I think for most people, they just sort of go at it like it's hard, but they go for it. But for me, I also have that problem of the existential, nihilistic kind of view of the world that I have, which I just can't get past. So when things are going wrong, I start thinking, well, none of this matters anyway. I'm going to be dead one day anyway. Why am I going through all this suffering? You know, so when those two things collide, I think maybe that has a factor in terms of me thinking all this suicidal stuff. I mean, I'm not going to do anything, but it's just something that goes on in my head, and I just have to be like, okay, let's just not listen to that, you know? And it's important that I stay on top of those things, and, you know, I've really got to be careful about how I manage my life. Even though I'm fine now, I'm probably going to be depressed on and off for my entire existence. That's just the pattern of my life. I think that's just my biology, my brain chemistry, my brain patterns. Unfortunately, I think I'm just going to be depressed on and off forever, you know? I'm expecting that, so you know, part of this is to help some of you guys out there, but some of it's also to remind me, you know, how did I recover from depression last time? Because when you're depressed, it can be hard to remember things from when you were healthy. Your memory tends to focus more on all the negatives. So here we are, like, future me, this is how you recovered last time, or this is a theory on how you recovered last time. I don't know how it's going to help you this time, but, you know, stay in there because you do recover after a while, you know. Just keep at it, future me. But yeah, for people out there who aren't future me, you know, if you're struggling, I hope this gave you some reassurance that, like, it can and will pass for most of you. I mean, it's kind of rare to have that depression that just doesn't go away. And, you know, even with that depression that doesn't go away, they're getting better at treatments all the time. I mean, gosh, I had a suggestion to get, you know, that TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation, I don't know, but that technology, I don't know how good it is, but I hear that it is improving. So if you have a really difficult form of depression that isn't going anywhere, one day that might actually be able to do a lot. There's also, you know, that electroshock therapy and all that, but new drugs are being developed all the time. So even if you have one of these more difficult forms of depression, as time goes on and technology improves, hopefully they will find the thing that will help you. So, you know, even if you're in that situation, I have hope for you that it will get better. And the only way that you know it's going to get better is if you hang in there as best you can. If you're in Australia, I would recommend talking to your GP if you haven't already. Like, if you're someone who hasn't had depression before and you're not sure what to do, I would go see your GP. I mean, Lifeline is a good starting point, especially like if you are in the middle of a suicidal episode and you really need someone to talk to. Go, Lifeline's good. But if you've got a little bit more time, it's not that urgent, I would go see your GP in Australia, because I don't know if it was in that Ahmed's Worth It video or something else. I'm sure I've explained some of the process of getting help. I'll put the Ahmed's Worth It one up there. I hope I'm pointing in the right corner, otherwise it's going to be heaps embarrassing. And I'll put it in the description as well. But yeah, you can check that out and let me know if I missed anything. In other countries, I imagine seeing a GP is probably the first step as well, but I don't know, you probably want to look up things locally. So, and if you're not sure about medication, I guess that's why that Ahmed's Worth It video might be helpful. Wow, so I don't even know how long this video is, but that's my current theory on how I recovered from my most recent depression. It was a little bit different to my previous recoveries. Hopefully it's a little bit more stable than my previous recoveries, because this was a much more serious depression, and, you know, I'm really aware now of my brain, the way it does stuff, so hopefully I can just manage my life better. I mean, as I mentioned in a previous video, things like realizing that casual work might just be the way that I need to navigate life, you know, making sure I don't burn out, because I can get pretty intense on some things and just, like, not realize that my life is being overtaken by all these stresses. So, you know, whoever you are, whatever you're like, if you're struggling with depression and stuff, sometimes you just need to find your own way to manage things as best you can, and it's not always through therapy and medication. Sometimes it's about learning how your life is. Of course, it depends a bit on your situation. I'm incredibly lucky that my parents can support, you know, my basic needs. But if you're in one of these situations where you need Centrelink, oh my god, I don't know what to do anymore. There's the Australian Unemployed Workers Union. They advocate a lot for people who are stuck on terrible Centrelink deals and whatever, so you could try talking to them. I've been following them on Facebook for a while, although I haven't seen anything in a bit, so maybe I unfollowed them for a bit or snoozed them. But yeah, I don't know, the politicians aren't really doing the greatest job. Like, I don't know who's gonna be better. I assume that the Liberals are probably the worst for welfare, but Labor doesn't exactly give you hope either. So I try and pay attention to that and see, like, you know, who might change things for the better. Just putting my boots on, sorry. But yeah, no, I don't know who to lobby. Like, I've written to my local member, but he's one of these Liberal Party losers who just thinks that we're all dull bludgers. I mean, I'm not on Centrelink anyway, but he would have considered me a dull bludger. And that's really terrible. Like, the people who really need help aren't getting it. It's a shame. But that's another ramble, and I've been recording for too long, so yeah. I guess that's all for now. If you have anything you want to say, add them to the comments, and I'll do my best to reply. I'm not a psychologist or anything, but I can try and help where I can try and help. Bye for now! Is that too cheerful for like a sign-off after a depression video? Ah, well, I will see you next week.